This is about Parshas Vayechi, which is the end, the last section of Genesis, as broken up by Ezra anyway. It's in Genesis, if you're just following, it starts from chapter 47, verse 28, until the end of the book of Genesis. And there's a very interesting portion, which is discussed much in Lubavitch, about the expiration, as it were, of Jacob, our forefather. It happens during the sixth portion, so we're looking at chapter 49, and it's verse 33. It's Jacob had just concluded blessing every single one of his sons with different blessings, and this is what the verse says. And Jacob concluded, commanding his sons, and he drew his legs up into the bed, and expired, and was brought into his people. And then chapter 50 continues, Joseph fell on his father's face, and he wept over him, and he kissed him, and Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. That was the custom in Egypt. And the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were complete for him, so the days of embalming completed, and the Egyptians wept over him for 70 days. So anyway, it goes on to say how he was mourned. And then he asked permission to take him out to bury him in the cave that Abraham had purchased for the forefathers. Now Rashi has a very interesting note here, often discussed, verse 33. And he drew his legs, Hebrew, ve'esaf raglav, he drew in his legs, and expired and was brought in. Rashi says, but no mention is made of death in his regard. And our rabbis of blessed memory said, our forefather Jacob did not die. He quotes Tanit 5b. If you look there, you see it's a whole discussion between, I think, Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yochanan. I think it says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Yaakov vinu lo meser. Rabbi Yochanan says, Yaakov, our forefather, did not die. And so Rabbi Yitzchak tells him, didn't they embalm him? Didn't they eulogize him? Was it, what are you talking about? And so he says they did, but this was just for this was just for kind of a show. And Rabbi Yochanan at one point says, just like his sons are alive, so too he is alive. And there's like a concept here about the departing of the righteous from the world. That when a righteous person like Jacob, our forefather, says about him that his bed was complete, meaning all 12 of his sons carried out his mission in this world and furthered his mission in this world, which was the spreading the knowledge of the one true God of Israel, and he is Israel, to the inhabitants of the whole planet. All 12 of his sons were seen as perfectly righteous, despite their several occurrences which one could interpret to show that they weren't actually perfectly righteous, depending on if you're a chassid or if you interpret it literally or however. But they were men of very high stature and high caliber, either way, any way you want to look at it. Generally speaking, I mean, Yehuda is the one who abducted a prostitute knowingly. He thought she was a prostitute anyway, but regardless, the point is that because Jacob, Israel, Yaakov was so, those names are synonymous, was so righteous, and he had 12 living sons. So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yitzchak, if you look at the Gemara, it looks like they're having a discussion almost about when Rabbi Yochanan is going to pass away, because I think Rabbi Yitzchak is Rabbi Yochanan's student, and he's saying, and he's talking to him about when he's going to pass away. I think Rabbi Yochanan's point is, if you go over what I teach you, if you review what you're learning from me, I will not depart from this world. The Gemara says in a later spot that when you say something in your teacher's name, that his lips move in the grave. And there's a concept that for the righteous, their life here is transient. It's a few years, 70 years, 80 years, in Yaakov's case, 147 years. But what they leave on this planet for all eternity is eternal. And basically, nowadays we're very fortunate in a way, but it's a very peculiar case that we're able to record people like in this format, and we can have this technically, if the internet, if nothing happens to it, if no one abolishes it, we can have this online forever, for what it's worth, and you can be really preserved forever. But before such a thing happened, really what person that was there writing, and even writing was hard to hold on to, because books were passed from generation to generation. They got worn. They didn't have they didn't have the technology they have now. A way a person was remembered, the main way, was by his good deeds, by the lessons he saw, the way he lived his life. And I think Rashi's point here is even a point even about Rashi himself. And by Rashi, we already had, I think, much more of an ability to print and to hold on to print things. They had complete copies of the Talmud in Rashi's time. Rashi commented on the entire Talmud, and they had Rashi's commentary was added to that, and then they redacted it with Rashi's commentary, and then Tosfos later, his grandchildren, were also added. So we're able to see these people even after they expire from the physical world. But it's a very sensitive point, and I think a lot of times I know that people who are very cold on Lubavitch, they give Lubavitch a hard time about a person disappearing from this world, and he's dead. If he's dead, he's dead, and there's no way he can be alive. He can't be alive and dead at the same time. But righteous people aren't the same. Righteous people aren't the same caliber. They don't have the same. They're not subject to the same rules as the rest of us. There's a book called, if you're Sephardic, this book is like your Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's called the Ben Ish Chai, and the Ben Ish Chai was an Iraqian codifier of Jewish law. His father was, and basically what happens to him is that his father passes away, and he is left. He's 25 years old. He's in Baghdad, and he's still the most proficient, really, of all the residents of Baghdad in terms of handing down Jewish law. So they want him to be ascend to the position of rabbi, but he's not ready to do it. So what happens is he says his father would visit him during the year and would go over Jewish law with him, and he would write down what his father had taught him, and he called this the book of the Ben Ish Chai, the book of the living man. So this is basically a concept in Judaism that you see. This is in the 1900s. I think in the turn of last century that Ben Ish Chai wrote his book, and this is a concept that exists throughout all of Judaism, and it's nothing to be embarrassed of or shy of. When righteous people depart, they don't simply depart, and their soul is able to still affect the world. Not only that, that's why we still go to the resting place of these people. It's now 30 days before Yud Shvat. We'll go to the resting place of the previous Rebbe, and the Lavnei should intercede on our behalf on high, that Hashem should sweeten harsh judgments and make things more bearable for us, for His children. And it's nothing to be embarrassed of. And it's one of the things, obviously, the entirety of religion. You have to take on faith. But it's a very Jewish concept to have a life after death, and it's something that it comes from the Torah itself in this week's parsha. I'm open to any comments and discussion on this. Thank you so much.